Over brunch cocktails, my mother whispered, "Don't confuse sitting here with being cherished." My aunt let out a quiet chuckle. My brother flashed a cunning smile. I managed a tight-lipped grin, left a generous tip, and slipped away silently. 2 weeks later, I closed our shared bank account, sold my portion of the family property, and blocked all their transactions. My cousin texted me, asking why her cards were being declined. The family group chat exploded. Then a phone call changed everything. Sunday gatherings were once my favorite, not for the overpriced food or sparkling drinks, but because they let me pretend we were a true family. I'd arrive early, cover the bill, book the table, even handle the parking. No one asked me to. No one thanked me either. It was simply assumed I'd take care of everything, as always. That morning, the sky was overcast, but the rooftop venue was lively. My mother had picked the place, calling it elegant yet sophisticated, code for expensive and photo-worthy. I sat alone for 20 minutes, the server hovering nearby, probably thinking I'd been ditched. They arrived together, Mom, Aunt Carol, Ethan, and Sophie, laughing like they'd just left a private joke I wasn't part of. Sophie barely looked up from her phone. Ethan high-fived the server. Mom adjusted her sunglasses despite the clouds, and Carol asked loudly about the bottomless drinks, as if it was the day's top concern. I ordered for everyone, as usual. Halfway through the second round, I mumbled something cheesy like, "It's great to be together," trying to break the awkward silence as they scrolled their screens. That's when Mom leaned in, her glass glinting, and murmured, "Don't confuse sitting here with being cherished." I froze, unsure if I'd heard correctly. But Aunt Carol's soft laugh confirmed it like it was an inside joke. Ethan smirked. Sophie's thumb paused over her phone for a moment, noting the exchange. I sat there, stunned. For years, I'd been their lifeline, covering overdrafts, paying Mom's rent when she came up short, bailing Ethan out after he lost money in a shady investment, funding Sophie's college when her grants fell through. They all knew. But in that moment, they made it clear. My presence was incidental, my value tied to what I provided. To them, I was just there, convenient, expected. So I forced a smile, stayed quiet, finished my drink. I left a large tip, more than the server deserved, but someone needed kindness that day. I stood, muttered about a work emergency, and left. They didn't follow. No one checked if I was okay. 2 weeks later, I began severing ties. First, the joint account, meant as a shared resource but funded solely by me. Mom used it for essential luxury purchases. Ethan treated it like his personal ATM. Sophie tapped it for emergencies, like the time she spent $500 on a pet therapist because her dog seemed off. I closed it, transferred the balance to my private account, and secured it. Then came the family lake house. My name was on the deed, I'd paid for most of it. They treated it like a free retreat. Weekends, holidays, last-minute getaways, I'd stock it, maintain it, cover the taxes. They'd show up and complain about the signal's strength. I hired a lawyer, had it valued, and sold my share to a third party. No warning, just signed papers. Next, I cut all shared services, cloud storage, streaming subscriptions, the family phone plan. I sent them their final balances with a note. Set up your own. 3 days later, Sophie texted, "Why's everything declined?" I didn't reply. The group chat lit up, confusion, then anger, then demands. Is this a glitch? Dan, what's with the account? Why's the lake house locked? Did the streaming password change? They weren't asking because they cared. They were asking because they couldn't use me anymore. Then the panic hit. Ethan messaged privately. "Hey, no idea what's going on, but can you spot me till next week?" Mom called 3 times in a row. Aunt Carol sent a vague text about how family is everything and you don't turn your back on kin. Sophie sent a string of question marks as if that would unlock the funds. I blocked them all. 2 days later, a call stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't Mom, Ethan, or Sophie. It was Uncle Tom, who I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. He stayed out of family drama, never showed up to brunches, never played the guilt card. I answered. He got straight to it. "They're planning something, Dan," he said, his voice steady but weighted, like he was warning me of an approaching storm. He said Ethan was asking around, trying to find a way to contest the lake house sale, even talking to a lawyer about challenging it. Sophie was spreading rumors that I'd hacked her accounts and ruined the family. Aunt Carol was hinting I'd lost my grip, maybe joined some strange group. But Mom, she was telling everyone, cousins, her book club, her yoga group, that I'd always been troubled, that she was praying for my healing. Tom didn't sugarcoat it. They're not just mad you stepped away. They're rewriting the story to make you the bad guy. I listened, phone pressed to my ear as he laid it out. The manipulation, the fake concern, the way they twisted the narrative to paint themselves as victims. Then he said something that hit hard. "You're not wrong for walking away, Dan. You're finally seeing clearly." It stung because I'd been doubting myself. Was I too harsh, overreacting, cutting off family over money? But it wasn't just the money. It was how they dismissed me while I held them up, smirked when they took, sighed when I hesitated, whispered that my presence didn't matter, as if I hadn't learned that lesson every time they ignored me. Tom offered to help if things got worse, said I could crash at his place if I needed space. He'd been there, he said, not with money, but emotionally. "Leaving family isn't the hardest thing I've done," he told me. "It was the most necessary." That night, I started untangling every remaining connection. Mom was still a cosigner on an old car loan. I removed her. Ethan had access to a shared cloud folder with sensitive documents, tax records, IDs. Revoked, passwords changed, bank permissions triple-checked. I closed every gap. Around midnight, another call came. Not Tom, it was Sophie from an unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. She was crying, frantic. No greeting, just, "I need cash now, my card's not working. I'm stuck at this hotel and they're going to kick me out." I asked where she was. She hesitated, then mumbled, "Vegas." I stayed silent as she rambled about being stranded, her friends bailing, her phone dying. She needed $600 wired to get home. I hung up. A minute later, she texted, "You're cruel, I'm your family." Then, "You can't do this," and finally, "Everyone's against you. You'll regret this." I stared at the screen, waiting for guilt or anger. Nothing came, just calm. The next morning, the group chat was gone. They'd blocked me. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. 2 days later, a heavy envelope arrived from an unfamiliar law firm in Vermont. My stomach dropped at the sight of the return address. Inside was a legal motion from Ethan, challenging the lake house sale, claiming I'd sold it without family approval and acted under emotional distress, possibly due to mental instability. I read that line twice. Attached was a statement from Mom, typed, signed, notarized. She claimed I'd grown erratic over the past year, making reckless financial decisions and cutting off family support. She described events that never happened. Late-night calls where I supposedly ranted, texts where I accused them of betrayal, threats to sever ties forever. It was fiction, but it hurt because it twisted my real feelings just enough to make me seem unstable. She knew how to play it, subtle enough to be plausible, sharp enough to make me doubt myself. No mention of the rent payments I'd covered. No word about the overdrafts, the car repairs, the medical bills I'd paid. No trace of the brunches, the cocktails, the silence I endured while they took. I didn't call her. I called Tom. He answered without pleasantries. "They made their move," I said, telling him about the motion, the letter, Mom's statement. I could hear him shift, probably reaching for the cigarettes he swore he'd quit. "They don't just take," he said. "They rewrite history to make you look crazy for stopping." It clicked. This wasn't about the money or the lake house anymore. It was about control, about punishing me for stepping out of line, for refusing to be their bank. They needed me to be wrong, unhinged, so their story held up. I hired a lawyer, a sharp one. He read the documents and gave a wry chuckle like he'd seen this before. "Got proof of what you've given them?" he asked. That question stung. I hadn't kept detailed records. A few payment confirmations, some emails, but most of it was informal. Handshakes, promises, trust. Because they were family. That word used to mean something, not anymore. The legal process moved fast. My lawyer filed a response, gathering what evidence I had, bank statements, texts, transfer records. Every dollar I'd given became leverage. Meanwhile, the family's silence broke. Ethan emailed, "This isn't personal. You forced us." Aunt Carol posted a vague status about watching loved ones lose their way. Sophie unblocked me just to DM. "Just apologize and fix this. You're not the victim." Mom stayed quiet, but her yoga friend, Ellen, who once asked if I was dating anyone at a family picnic, messaged me on social media with a scripture verse and a nudge to find my way back to grace. Grace. I was done with grace. I was done giving them the benefit of the doubt. I sent one last group chat message, unsure if they'd see it. "You win, you get your way, the court can decide." Then I left it. 2 weeks later, the judge dismissed the motion. No standing, no evidence. The lake house sale stood. I was clear, but it didn't feel like victory. They'd declared war, and I wasn't done. The quiet after the ruling wasn't peace. It was the calm before their next move. I underestimated their persistence. A week later, I tried logging into my personal bank account, not the shared one, my own. It was frozen. A red alert. Suspended for suspected fraud. I called the bank. After an infuriating wait, they said a third party had flagged suspicious activity. The claim pointed to a transfer I'd made 6 months ago, closing a family investment account I'd funded and had every right to shut down. My gut screamed Mom. She still had access to an old joint savings account from when I helped her buy her condo. I'd never fully severed it. The freeze lasted 48 hours, but it disrupted everything. My rent bounced, my credit card locked. I missed a medical appointment because I couldn't pay for transport. Then came the email from work. Subject: concerns about recent legal issues. An anonymous tip had sent them a fabricated online article claiming I was an unreliable consultant with a history of financial misconduct. It wasn't real, just a convincing fake with my name, photo, and job title. HR wanted a meeting. I sat in their office explaining something that sounded ridiculous. My own mother, brother, and cousin spreading lies to discredit me because I'd stopped funding their lives. I had no solid proof of who sent it, but the timing pointed to them. My boss believed me. HR was skeptical but let it go. Still, the damage lingered. Coworkers' wary looks, hushed conversations, the shift in how people saw me. That night, staring at my ceiling, I realized they weren't fighting to win anymore. They were fighting to ruin me. I called Tom, told him about the bank, the job, the fake article. He didn't ask for proof. "They're falling apart," he said. "This is what desperation looks like. You were their foundation, and now they're turning on each other." He was right. The next day, Sophie sent a screenshot from their new group chat, one I wasn't in. Ethan was blaming Mom for overstepping with the fraud claim. Aunt Carol called Sophie a traitor for not picking a side. Mom wrote plain as day. "He was never really one of us." Sophie added no explanation, just one line. "I didn't think it would go this far." Then she blocked me again. That was the last I heard from them. Until the night someone tried to break into my apartment. It was just past midnight. I was half asleep on the couch, a glass of bourbon sweating on the table, the TV murmuring some documentary I wasn't watching. A knock at the door, soft, almost polite, but it kept going. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more, same rhythm. My heart raced, steady but sharp. I lived in a safe building, a secure area, but something felt off. I checked the peephole. Empty, then a knock came from the back, the fire escape. I froze. I don't recall grabbing the kitchen knife, but it was in my hand. I crept to the window, staying low, and peered through the blinds. A shadow stood there, still, facing the glass, not trying to enter, just watching. I backed away, called 911, gave my address, said someone was on my fire escape. The dispatcher told me to stay put. Police were nearby. By the time they arrived, the figure was gone. Nothing stolen, no forced entry, just a cigarette butt on the railing. The officers took my statement, asked if I had enemies. I almost laughed. "How do you explain your family?" I didn't name them, no proof, no cameras, no prints, but I knew. The next morning, a text from an unknown number. "You don't get to walk away unscathed." That was it. I changed the locks, installed a camera, filed a police report with the messages, the fraud claims, the screenshots. They took notes, said they'd look into it, but I knew it wouldn't lead anywhere. You don't arrest people for being cruel or cunning, not without solid evidence. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace, distance, silence, so I made the final cut. I wrote one email to Mom, Ethan, Carol, and after a pause, Sophie. Subject: over. The message: "You've won, you've broken everything, including me. Whatever we were, it's gone. Don't contact me again." Then I blocked them, phone, email, everything. Every connection severed. Tom called days later, said they were scrambling. That word had spread through the family network. Mom was playing the victim, telling everyone I'd abandoned them for no reason, that I was unstable, a risk. Then he paused. "You won't like this," he said. They were holding a family gathering without me. Photos flooded social media, smiles, hugs, laughter like nothing had happened. One image stood out, a banner across their backyard fence, bold letters reading, "Family First." But they didn't know what I was planning. They didn't expect what came next. Because I did something I never thought I would, I forgave them. And I gave them one last chance. The very last. A month after their staged gathering and smug photos, I reached out. No explanation, just a message in the old group chat, dormant for months. "Let's meet. One time, talk it out." I chose a quiet Italian restaurant downtown. Neutral ground, private booth. I arrived early. They showed up like it was nothing. Grins, hugs, casual jabs disguised as compliments. Not one apology, just chatter and subtle digs. I let them talk themselves out. Then I laid it all out. What I'd done for them, what they'd done to me. The fraud claim, the job sabotage, the fake concern. They shifted uncomfortably as the room grew quiet. Then I offered something they didn't expect. One final gesture, a trust fund. Monthly payments for a year. No contact, no strings, just support from a distance. A clean break. They agreed instantly, signed the papers without hesitation. I left the restaurant thinking maybe they'd understand. 2 weeks later, the trust was empty. Every penny gone. Accounts traced to Ethan, Sophie, and a shell company in Mom's maiden name. They didn't even try to hide it. No calls, no texts, just silence waiting for my reaction. I didn't give them one. I pressed charges, froze the assets, cut them off for good. No confrontation, no speech. Just a locked door and the sound of my footsteps walking away, finally, without looking back.